China is killing Africa with debt and colonizing it country by country. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Have you ever borrowed money, say, for school or a shipping port, but struggled to pay it back? And then your lender, was like, okay, no problem. Just give me the rights to everything you earn for the next 99 years. I think we can all relate. And so can a lot of countries who've borrowed money from China. It's called debt trap diplomacy. Just ask Sri Lanka, a small island nation off the coast of India. In 2010, they got a small $1.5 billion Chinese loan to build a giant shipping port in the town of Hambantota. But there wasn't much shipping traffic, which meant not much cash flow. Sri Lanka missed a few payments, and next thing you know, they had to sign away the entire port to China with a 99-year lease. But it's not always easy to learn from others' mistakes. In Africa, dozens of countries have taken out Chinese loans. And last September, China pledged to invest another $60 billion in Africa.
China and Africa will join hands to build a China-Africa community with shared future that features win-win cooperation, happiness for all, and harmonious coexistence.
Of course, Xi Jinping's definition of win-win is that if the country can pay off the loan, China wins. If they can't, China takes over its assets instead, and China still wins. So, win-win. So, which African countries are most at risk of, shall we say, getting Sri Lanka'd? Well, here are the 5 African countries with the most debt to China. Number 5, Sudan. Sudan was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to recognize the People's Republic of China. That was back in 1959. The diplomat calls it China's original foothold, which should not be confused with the original Footloose. You can tell the difference because Footloose had Kevin Bacon and Sudan had genocide. Sudan is a conflict-torn country that holds the record for the longest-running civil war in Africa, resulting in the deaths of 2 million people and the breakup of the country into Sudan and South Sudan. Here's Sudan's leader Omar al-Bashir at the recent China-Africa summit in Beijing. Bashir's name might sound familiar because of all the war crimes he committed in Darfur, allegedly. But things are looking up for Sudan since it's set to get the largest share of that $60 billion Xi Jinping pledged to Africa back in September. Chinese investment in Sudan has given China control of around 75% of the country's oil industry, under the supervision of the China National Petroleum Corporation. Although some of the facilities are fixer-uppers, some of that Chinese money was used to upgrade the Khartoum refinery and double production to 100,000 barrels a day, which is important because the vast majority of that oil goes to China. And there are plenty of other resources to tap in Sudan too, like gold and loyalty. Sudan's estimated debt to China is now $6.4 billion. And with China's pledge to provide more financing, that debt could balloon big time. According to this IMF report, Sudan's external debt is assessed to be unsustainable. But that's not even so bad compared to several other countries, including number 4, the Republic of the Congo. Not to be confused with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, its larger and less democratic neighbor. The Republic of the Congo owes China $7.3 billion.
China and Congo have launched projects worth several $1 billion. These include a motorway between Brazzaville and the economic capital of Pointe-Noire, the construction of Brazzaville Stadium, a hydroelectric dam, and upgrades to the country's airport.
According to a paper by the China-Africa Research Initiative, the Republic of the Congo is one of 3 African countries, alongside Zambia and Djibouti, where Chinese loans make up the most significant contributor to high risk of debt distress. So, what does this Chinese debt mean?
It's a growing amount. We don't know the conditions. And these countries are going to be increasingly leveraged to repay that. When they're unable, China will make additional demands. These countries will have less money to spend on social services and other programs. It's somewhat of a downward spiral.
The mere thought of those additional demands are making Congo's president break out in a sweat. Some of the projects there have raised eyebrows, like when Chinese companies built the new Congolese parliament building for free. Maybe it's so they can make sure the offices are set up just the way they like it when Congo defaults on its debts and Chinese officials move in and take over. No, I'm just kidding. The Chinese regime doesn't want to take over. It's more likely they built the parliament building so they could bug the whole thing, like they did with the African Union building. More on that in a few minutes. According to the IMF, Congo is officially in debt distress, and they've been shopping around for a bailout. But it's not going to be easy. When the IMF did some due diligence, they found the Republic of the Congo may be hiding part of its debt. The country claims its debt to GDP ratio is 77%. But the IMF calculated that ratio to be 117%. They accused the government of lying and called for an anti-corruption watchdog to be set up before they agree to release any funds. But I have a better idea, one that won't require Congo to clean up its corruption. Congo is a major oil producer, so maybe China will agree to take oil as collateral and then lend them some more money. It'll be win-win for China. Number 3, Kenya. Home of the famous Maasai warriors.
Kenya's Maasai warriors may have used spears like these to hunt wild animals in the past, but now they're using them to take part in the Maasai Olympics.
In the past, young Maasai men proved themselves by killing lions. But now, with its debt to China at nearly $8 billion, the Maasai are instead hunting for cash. More money, fewer dead lions. Win-win. But not all Kenyans feel like they're winning. There are reports of disgruntled travelers on a new $3.5 billion railway built and funded by China.
Customers complain tickets can be bought one way only and just 3 days in advance.
The 290-mile Nairobi-Mombasa Railway is Kenya's biggest infrastructure project since the country became independent in 1964. Its catchy slogan, with Chinese characteristics, is "Connecting nations, prospering people." Kenya's president loves his train sets so much that he recently secured another $3.6 billion loan from China to extend the railway line by 155 miles. Opposition parties say the project is too expensive, won't generate enough revenue, and is a ticking financial time bomb, because after a 10-year grace period, Kenya has to start paying back the loan. But Kenya's president isn't worried, because that'll be the next president's problem. Number 2, Ethiopia. Ethiopia owes China an estimated $13.5 billion. But don't worry, China's ambassador says by lending all this cash, China is not only helping Ethiopia, but the entire world.
China sometimes feels lonely because we are almost one of the biggest and the only country that has invested heavily in the development of infrastructure in this country. Because we believe finally the development of infrastructure has not only served the local people, the host country, it has also served the investors from other countries.
How selfless. Chinese money and Chinese workers built Ethiopia a rail link to neighboring Djibouti, and a system of trams in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa.
It's good they're building the tram to reduce the traffic jams in the city. With regard to quality, I think the Chinese did an okay job, but still it might have been better to give it to a Western company.
Well, at least the quality is okay. Not as high-tech as the African Union headquarters China built in Ethiopia, though. That building is so advanced, it was able to spy on people inside and transmit confidential data to Shanghai each day for 5 years. In China's defense, it wasn't a bug. It was a feature. And number 1, Angola. Angola is the African country with the most debt to China, $25 billion. To rack up that kind of debt, it took more than a few one-off projects. In Angola, Chinese companies and Chinese loans are building entire cities, like the city of Zongo, on the outskirts of the capital.
The multi-million-dollar city is being fully funded by the China International Fund Limited, who will hand over the project to the government upon completion.
Yes, it will definitely hand it over to the Angolan government because it's the right thing to do. Incidentally, that China International Fund Limited has shady links to the Chinese regime and a history of investing in unstable African dictatorships, all the while securing rights to extract minerals and other resources. Chinese companies are also using debt to finance what will become the biggest airport in a city you've never heard of, Luanda. Luanda is Angola's capital, but it probably doesn't need an airport as big as the one in Cairo, a city you've definitely heard of, especially when it costs nearly $4 billion and is several years behind schedule. On the plus side, the construction is creating jobs in a country where the unemployment rate is 20%. The downside is those jobs are being done almost exclusively by Chinese workers, and let's just say locals are not happy. Maybe this isn't win-win. So, what do you think about African countries being so highly indebted to China? Leave your comments below. And before you go, it's time to answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. David Michael White asks, Chris, I know that it's been a while since you have been in South Korea, but what was the best part of your trip there? Good question, David. Matt and I went to South Korea in February 2016, where we explored traditional Korean clothing, traditional Korean dancing, and traditional Korean fried chicken. But the best part of our trip was definitely going to the border with North Korea. We almost didn't make it. We had asked our Korean guide to drive us, but they wouldn't let us in because, and this is the actual reason, because he was Korean. Apparently locals are too big of a risk unless they've gotten special permission. Anyway, we didn't get in and we had to fly home the next day. But before we left, Shelley explained to me over the phone that, it's possible to change plane tickets, which we did. And 2 days later, we signed a waiver acknowledging that we accept the risk of being shot at any time, and we stepped over the line into North Korea.
Excuse me, so what country are we in right now?
Think about it. We crossed the border line.
We're in North Korea right
here.
now.
North Korea, this side.
Wow.
That was a fun trip. Thanks for your question, David. And thank you for watching. Be like David and support China Uncensored by pledging $1 or more per episode through the crowdfunding website Patreon. As a special perk for our supporters, I'll answer your questions at the end of my episodes. Thanks for watching China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.